Oh, there it is. Very good.
So I'm going to invite the family, the mourners, to come and take the front row, and everyone else can gather around on either side of the. If there is anyone who would prefer to sit, please, there's a chair at the end here.
Does anybody need to sit?
Please try to avoid stepping where the graves lie. Please try to avoid stepping where the graves lie. Thank you.
Set the eternal always before me. God is at my side, I shall not be moved. Therefore does my heart exult and my soul rejoice. My being is secure. For you will not abandon me to death, nor let your faithful one see destruction. Show me the path of life. Your presence brings fullness of joy. Enduring happiness is your gift. Of course, so sorrowful to be here at this funeral for Avrum, our dear, dear friend, father, brother, husband, this man who filled up a room with his presence, with his humor, his storytelling, his brilliance, his openness. We are so very, very sad to have lost him, and so very, very grateful for his life, for all the ways in which he brought meaning and joy and love to our world. As we begin our service, we find comfort in the words of our tradition in the Psalms that have given a sense of compassion and connection to those who find themselves full of sorrow. Probably most well known, of course, is the 23rd Psalm. Joined together in the Hebrew and then the English, which is in your program. Adonai Elohi lo echsar, bino tesheyor b'tzei, amemenu Yenachaleni nafshi eshover Hashanen Roshi Kosirevaya Achtov Achesed Yedefuni Kol Yemei Chayai Veshavti Beveit Adonai Leorech Yamin. Together, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. That Avrum loved living here in Vancouver in the beauty of British Columbia, going out for walks and hikes in nature. Our most beautiful psalms is Esa Einai, I look up to the mountains. Together. Lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your coming and going, now and forever. Amen. Some of you know that my colleague, Rabbi Dan Moskowitz, had a very long and beautiful connection with Avrum since he came to Temple Shalom, and he's on sabbatical and was very sad not to be here, but he actually wrote some words that he asked that I share today, and so I want to read these on his behalf. One of the great sadnesses that comes with being a rabbi is that so often you only really get to know members of your congregation after they have died. It's in those moments that a family sits down with you and tells you all of the beautiful things of the deceased, and you wish that you actually had the chance to know them. But this was not the case with Avrum. I was blessed, like so many of you, to get to know him and truly love and admire him for many years. Avrum and I began having somewhat regular lunches at Nando's on 41st, 5 or 6 years ago. It all began when most relationships with rabbis often end. He disagreed with one of my sermons. I don't remember the exact sermon, but it was on the subject of God and theology. He the scientist, me the theologian. He came up to me after the sermon and said something to the effect of, "Dan, it was a really great sermon. I don't agree with most of it, but you said it well. Let's talk sometime." And thus began our years-long conversations about God, Judaism, ethics, science, technology, family, Israel, politics, books in general. He was always telling me what to read, and science fiction in particular, which we both liked very much. In fact, one sermon was entirely to his credit when he turned me on to historian and philosopher Yuval Noah Harari, and his books on the origin of things and the future of humanity. We must have spent hours debating and hypothesizing how the world and society got into the state that it is, and what it will look like in the future. Avrum taught me through his sharp analytical mind and his wry wit that at the core of his pessimism for the future was a tremendous love for humanity, an amazement in the human capacity to adapt and find a way through the difficulties that lay ahead. Ultimately, for Avrum, this came, I think, from his love of people and of life. Another Avraham, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, talks about seeing the world with radical amazement, with awe and wonder. As an engineer, Avrum studied how things work, how they go together, and what makes them fail and fall apart. I said to him more than once during our lunches that I was genuinely surprised by his own radical appreciation for the world and humanity, even with all its flaws. I told him that I would have thought as an engineer and scientist that he would have a more clinical, scientific view of things. But again, like so many ways, Avrum opened my eyes and helped me see the world through his keen perception. He marveled at the world and how it worked, not in a miraculous way. He did not believe in miracles, but in a way that showed deep admiration for the intricacies of life and nature. That was his faith. That was his spirituality. He believed deeply in the origin, design, and construct of things. And he was appalled and frustrated at how humanity would so often mess those things up. He would use a more colorful term. Avrum told me time and time again that he loved life, that he felt he had done all that he set out to do, that he had loved and laughed and learned and enjoyed. He was very clear with me as we talked in the later years about his cancer and his diagnosis, that he had no regrets, that he would miss his family, his friends, his beloved wife, Nava. And still, when this time came, he wanted me to be sure to tell everyone, though I think we all know this just from knowing and loving him, that he was satisfied with his life. As he put it, ever the engineer, 99% of my life has been great, 1% not so hot. I can think about things I could complain about, and there are not so many, so why kvetch? Avrum, thank you for allowing me to be counted among your many students. I learn not only from your wisdom and knowledge, but the example of the humanity, kindness, and humor of your soul. Your lessons will live on in me as they do in all of your students. Your voice is in my head when I read and when I write a sermon that I know you would disagree with. I'll still give it, of course. You would want me to. What I will miss is then discussing it with you afterwards, and the many tangents and directions those conversations would take us through. I know I am not alone in that, talking with you, listening to you, that along with the cowboy hat you always wore, is something we will all miss very, very much, but we will never forget you. In spite of our arguments to the contrary, if there is indeed a God, a heaven, and an afterlife, I know God is truly in for a treat should the two of you meet up for lunch at the heavily version of Nando's from time to time. Your memory will always be a blessing. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination. But life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage. From childhood to maturity, and youth to age. From innocence to awareness, and ignorance to knowing. From foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom. From weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness, and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage, from birth to death to life everlasting. I know there are so many incredible stories and reflections we all have about Avrum, and at the service right now we are going to hear from a few people that have an opportunity at Shiva to share more, but I want to begin by first inviting Avrum's daughter Adva to read words on behalf of Avrum's brother Siggy, who is not able to be here today.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here with us today.
Adva, can you come up here?
I will. I just was kind of doing a circle there. Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to say hello to everyone. Thank you for being here with us. And before, I guess I'll use this. Before I start reading my dear Uncle Siggy's words, I just wanted to quickly explain this very flashy scarf I'm wearing, which is not very funeral attire, but it's very Avrum attire. So, for as long as I could remember, my dad had a pretty crazy sock collection. And it may or may not have started with a bunch of socks he bought while he was at a conference in Hawaii. And he'd wear them, and there'd be a hole, and he'd stitch it, or my mom would stitch it, and another hole, and stitched, and another hole, and stitched till there was no more stitching to be done. So whichever parts of the socks that were still intact, I salvaged and made him this scarf so that he could wear them for however long he wanted to. So that's what I have on right now. Okay. So here we go. It was February 15th, 1948, when I arrived in Winnipeg at the age of 12 years with my biological brother and sister after a long 2-day trip from Halifax. Outside, the temperature was minus 40 degrees. I was very fortunate. Here was this kid with a lot of baggage, having lost my family and separated from my siblings, and was given this new home with a new family that welcomed me with open arms. Avrum was very supportive and a great mentor. Before long, I felt like I found a new brother. He taught me to ride a bicycle. We played ping pong and chess for hours while recuperating from chicken pox. We worked on a model train in the basement, played tennis at Sargent Park in Gimli, and spent summers at Habonium Camp. All in all, his support and generosity made me feel at home. Family doesn't always have to be blood related. It's the people that accept you into their lives, the people that accept you for who you are and what you bring with you. Avrum was just that. He accepted me, he mentored me, and he was my brother and friend. I remember one summer when the two of us got a surveying job in northern Manitoba in a place called Grand Rapids. Avrum already had 1 year of engineering, but I was still in high school. His job was using I looked up the pronunciation of this word and I practiced, and now theodolite. Great job at that. Theodolite instrument to map the terrain for a future hydro dam, and I was a rod man. We worked 10-hour days, 6 days a week, and we may not have been blood brothers, but those black flies didn't care and they had a ball. Avrum was a great storyteller and jokester who could always make people laugh, and in fact, had he written this eulogy, I can guarantee everyone here would be laughing. He wasn't selfish, but the opposite. He didn't judge people and was always willing to help. A perfect example was when the United Church in Grand Rapids needed a piano player. It did not deter him from volunteering to play at every Sunday service. He touched the lives of many people, and especially his students, and he will be dearly missed. My idol was our father, George Soudack, who, in my opinion, was a tzaddik, and Avrum had many of our father's traits, and they accepted me into the family. Thank you, Avrum, for the warmth you showed that 12-year-old boy, for the fun times growing up, for all you taught me, and for the memories, and mostly for allowing me to be part of your life. I just want to say one thing from you. Abba, with my first breath, you held me. With your last breath, I held you. I am forever blessed for this, and with all the breaths in between, I love you.
Thank you so much, Abba, and Siggy as well. I now want to invite Avrum's eldest daughter, Ruthie, to share some words as well.
Okay, can you hear me? My father was a man of small physical stature, but with a massive, marvelous personality. He was like a larger-than-life character. Nearly everyone who met him immediately loved him. His warmth, his humor, his intellect, his stories, and his easygoing temperament. In all of my life, I think I only saw my dad get angry once. During his last days, a constant flow of people came to pay their last respects to their beloved friend. And when the word got out that he had passed, my Facebook and WhatsApp feeds were absolutely flooded with comments from all sorts of people. Relatives, friends of his, friends of mine, acquaintances, saying how sad they were to hear this news and how much they loved him, and listing the amazing qualities he embodied. As a professor, he was known for his uniqueness and skill as a teacher, and was loved by his students, for he taught so much more than just engineering, and regaled them with jokes. And indeed, students of many years ago were among those who came to part from him. But as much as my dad was loved, he also loved. He had a soft and open heart. Sorry. He had a soft and open heart that embraced multitudes. His family, his friends of many years, his students, and so many more. He was incredibly gregarious and outgoing. He'd go to the market, chat with all the vendors, and would leave with a roster of new friends whom he would return to visit again and again. My dad made no differentiation between race, socioeconomic status, or age, and was truly interested in and cared about the people he met. My dad's love extended beyond the human realm into the animal world as well. All of his children have inherited his love of cats. And I remember that at the beginning of COVID, when we weren't sure exactly how it was transmitted, he was so upset that he couldn't pat the dogs that he passed when he was out for a walk. He was fascinated by owls, and he did the best gorilla imitation ever. We were truly blessed to be the children of a man with such a heart. He encouraged each of us to cultivate our talents and follow our dreams, and was a wonderful model for how to walk in the world. My dad taught me how to eat grapefruit. You cut it in half, scoop out each segment in turn, and once you've eaten them all, you pick up the peel and squeeze any remaining juice into a spoon to eat. That's how my father was about life, squeezing every possible drop out of it. He was a month short of 88 years old, well beyond Gvurat. He lived a full and fulfilling life and had few, if any, regrets. My dad lived life completely. He and Nava traveled extensively. He read voraciously. He loved good music, good food, good wine, good whiskey, walks in nature, and was always open to a new experience. He grew prize-winning dahlias and enjoyed a slew of hobbies. He watched his children grow up and flourish and delighted in his 2 amazing grandchildren. As his illness worsened, what troubled my dad most was his lack of energy, the inability to live the active, full life to which he had become so accustomed. The loss of a parent or a spouse is one of life's most significant and difficult transitions, marking a turning point after which we will never be the same. Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kosk said, "There's nothing more whole than a broken heart." I never understood what that meant until now. I bless all of us who loved my dad. Sorry. To be able to feel the wholeness that comes with such brokenness. The Midrash says that there are 6 things that, when they happen, resound from one end of the world to the other, but their voice is not heard. The soul leaving the body is one of these. Silently, slowly, my father is moving on, and on some level, the entire world resounds with the loss of a soul that made it a better place to live. I bless him to take all of our love with him so that it smooth the path of his journey onward. Next to my bed in Jerusalem, I have an old black and white picture of my dad on a swing. He must be in his 30s, wearing a white, short-sleeved, button-down shirt and dark trousers, leaning backward while gripping the chains of the swing with his hands, legs raised, flying through the air. I have always adored that picture. I like to imagine my dad that way now. Soaring, weightless, a soul released from the confines of a broken body, free, happy, and forever at rest. I wait for the day that I will meet you there, Dad, in that world of love and light. May his memory be a blessing.
Thank you so much, Bertie. I want to invite Avrum's colleague and dear friend, Tim Soudack, to share some words.
We've heard a lot about our dear friends Avrum's quality as a friend and father. He also had a very rich and rewarding professional life. He was interested in the mathematics of nonlinear systems, the kind of math that models strange and possibly chaotic behaviors. He studied electrical engineering at the University of Manitoba, completed his PhD at Stanford in a record 4-year time, and he started at UBC right after. He had more than 2 sabbaticals in Israel. He was at the Technion in a year where the university in Beersheba was founded, and he helped with the engineering faculty there. This is now the Ben Gurion University. And he was also at the Weizmann Institute. He had very successful collaborations both in the department and elsewhere, including with the famous mathematician Fred Brouwer, head of department at the University of Wisconsin, with whom he studied the mathematics of biological predator-prey systems. Avrum had mainly theoretical interest, except for his analog computers, which he set up in a student lab when he joined UBC, and he ran for a very long time, probably longer than most of his colleagues would have liked. Avrum had a passion for education and teaching. He was really comfortable in class, showing up with his hands in his pockets. He was the professor that students loved the most, partly for the clarity of his lectures, but very much for his jokes and the genuine care for students. We taught together a couple of courses. One had the final exam in this huge, intimidating exam hall only UBC would have. So to ease the tension, Avrum had the idea of the two of us showing up as the John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd characters from the Blues Brothers. I can't remember where he got the black suits, but Artistic Nava found the right sunshades and made us up to look the part. I don't know about the students, but we certainly had a great time. I also had the misfortune of teaching the second half of a course following Avrum. I sat through his lectures and realized he was a very hard act to follow. His delivery was a riot, and he had his students and me in stitches. Except for one occasion, when he told a play on words joke involving Mahatma Gandhi and a song from Mary Poppins. I was the only one laughing, to Avrum's surprise, so he asked the class what's going on. Turns out that half the class did not know who Gandhi was, and the other has not seen Mary Poppins. Avrum befriended not only his colleagues, but many of his students, some of whom have become lifelong friends and family. Thank you, Nava and Adva and Avyam, for being so welcoming to these friends. My morning coffee during my early years at UBC was always cheered up by Avrum, Charles Laszlo, and Rebab Ward, whose irreverent bantering was like a triple stand-up comedy act. Avrum's old-fashioned clothes, especially his discolored blue-gray, sort of undefinable polyester pants, were easy targets, but his repartees were ruthless, and I'll tell you some of them later tonight. Avrum also wore t-shirts at work. Once he had a string of beads to go with his t-shirt, and Frank Noakes, the department head, pointed to his beads and said, "Soudack, what's this?" Avrum, in turn, pointed at Noakes' tie and said, "Frank, what's this?" Avrum was anything but conventional. Even his technical writing had flair. And I quote from a paper from 1966, "After the smoke of the derivation clears, we arrive at the two Ritz integrals." And the lovely and unassuming bionote, which, written for a 1965 paper on engineering education, captures him as a person. I am married to a lovely and bright girl named Mickey, and for that reason have two lovely and bright daughters aged 2 and 5. And finally, I am interested in drama, which occupied much of my time during my undergrad years, music from Bach to Berg, photography, piano playing when I get the time, and last but far from least, people. Avrum, you are far from least in our lives, and we are going to miss you.
Thank you so much, Tim. Our final speaker during our service this morning is going to be Avyam, Avrum's son.
Hopefully last but not least. I was flying from Whitehorse to Vancouver to visit my dad a few weeks before his passing. And I read this quote on the plane that released a wave of emotions, and I started crying on my Air North flight. The ripples have reached their full amplitude, but the lake is glassy, and you are still hugging the shore. I didn't know what it meant when I read it, only that it hit me in an unexpected way. Now that Avrum has been gone for 4 days, I start to think about how there are elements that are taking on more meaning as I piece together my life without him. He passed on Sabbath, and we lit the candles and sang around him. And he was surrounded by love and family and tradition. And they say that a man who dies on Shabbos is a Soudack, a real mensch. I guess my father, if low in stature, was the height of grandeur. He was the professor, the mathematician, the reader, the musician, the keen-eyed photographer, a man of words, letters, and stamps. He was an enlightened soul, a Renaissance man, and able to rattle off obscure facts with an infinite depth of knowledge and a full circle of viewpoints. He had his pulse on culture, but not to show off. It wasn't pretension. It was an appreciation of deep beauty and the intricacies of life. But these aren't the parts that define him in my eyes, or maybe in the eyes of most of the people here. As I try to think of memories of my father, what comes to me are the moments, the funny gorilla faces, the rooster shrieks, his colorful stories, and off-color jokes. One of the traits I admire most about him and have tried to emulate was his ease of conversation. And it didn't matter who you were or how you looked. He approached everyone. He created connections. He was warm. He looked at you and he listened to you and he wanted to know you. He didn't judge you. And as the quote I read on my flight said, he reached you like the ripples on the lake. And I'm sure that's why many of you are here today. Thinking of these ripples, one moment I remember clearly is skipping stones with my father on a road trip down the Oregon coast, and him showing me the sidearm technique, exploring the dunes at Cannon Beach. He adored umpiring baseball and would spend countless time warming my arm before I pitched in minor A, despite having arthritis. He would throw underhand, expertly balancing his pipe in his mouth. And I always asked him why he didn't like to watch sport with me, and he would always joke that once the Dodgers left Brooklyn, baseball ended too. He was always involved in and supportive of his children's interests. Ruthie, Nava, Adva, and mine. He showed a genuine passion for and an embarrassing amount of pride in all of our pursuits. One of his favorite passions was photography, and particularly close-up photos of people, capturing of their authentic selves. What he loved was reaching people, a vessel of connectiveness between strangers. I thought of his love of connecting even on this past Saturday morning as the sun rose and the birds began their chorus. I peeked in the back of the outsourced hearse that was idling in our back lane, hoping that he would have a companion to strike up a conversation with. Wouldn't matter who it was, he would have lots to talk about. He came to visit me everywhere I lived, except Egypt. He went to every one of Adva's shows, including rehearsals. He keenly followed and kept Ruthie's writings, and was in awe of Nava's knowledge of wine. His support helped all his children reach their full amplitude. But he was more than just a father. He had a whole life as a husband, a friend, a colleague, a son, a brother, and a neighbor. And I think about the stories I don't know about his life, about the lives he had before I was born, and the stories that you have with him. He did talk to me over the last month about how gaps in his memory started to reappear, People, places, events that he hadn't thought of in decades have resurfaced vividly. There was a lot I did not know about his life that I wish I could ask him. I can't. Losing him feels like losing a part of me, and I don't know what I can fill it with. But what I do know is he truly loved my mom, a hopeless romantic. And that's something that became more apparent to me as I was going through his letters and photos last summer. His loving words and devotion to her. April 1988, Harare, 7:40 a.m. Good morning, my love. How wrong it feels getting up in the morning and not having you beside me. The same old story, taking for granted what you have and not taking advantage of it. I do know of his love and adoration for Ruthie, Nava, myself, Adva, his grandchildren Ethan and Nora. And in that I realize that part of him is still here, in the ripple that he created in our lives. He is in who we are. Ruthie and Nava and Adva, Ethan and my daughter and all of you. In the glassy lake, we can see our reflections, and that gives me comfort and solace. Bye, love.
Thank you so much, Avrum. To everyone, those were really remarkable and beautiful words that you all shared. Friends, our service is going to continue now with the chanting of the El Malay Rachamim. I want to invite those who are able to please stand. So we ask that Avrum's soul be bound up in eternal life. El Malay Rachamim, Shochen Bomomim, Amse Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kedoshim Utorim, Yezorakia Mashirim Et Nishmat Avraham Chaim Mordechai Ben Eliakim Malka שהלך לעולמו. בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Avraham Chaim Mordechai ben Eliakim Umalka, our beloved Avrum Soudack, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. We say together, Amen.
Amen.
I want to invite the pallbearers to come forward so that we might bring the casket to the grave. Everyone else to please follow. חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, הולך וחיים ורופא חולים ומכשיר
Okay, close.